folks, Jason MX Fever is always welcome back. This will be a video on setting cam timing on a Suzuki LT230. Just real quick, I'll probably have another video on this because I did a lot of work to this machine. This was probably destined to the junkyard, but if it's savable, I'll save it. So this was the frame up, engine out, painted the frame. I did a swap to a Suzuki LT230S, so it's 2 inches wider in the front. Had to do a lot of fabrication with the brakes and where the hoses mount. Swing arm off the 250S with the shocks, where it both has more front travel, front and rear. New bearings in the swing arm, a whole kit and caboodle. And I hope to have a video on that. This thing took entirely too long, so if I can find the videos, I'll make one about it. But when I bought this machine, it got it for pretty much pocket change, because like I say, it was destined for the junkyard. But it would run, but it ticked really bad. Like it didn't sound like you should be running at all. And it smoked, but it shifted and the reverse worked. It's got the normal famous broken case saver, but I'll come up with something to do there too. But what had happened, what they told me is they paid somebody to do a rebuild on it, and what looks like to me is they did the rebuild and put a standard bore piston in a completely wore out cylinder. You can still see the N on there from the Nomura brand piston. There's very little wear on it, and it clattered around in there. I could push on it with my hand and make it jiggle back and forth, and that's where the ticking was coming from. And also the cam, the lobes were pretty much rounded. I really don't know how it was running, but it did. Not real well, obviously. The cam was junk, the rocker arms were junk, so I had to source used parts. Thankfully, a group on Facebook hooked me up with a lot of that stuff. So I sent this is the original cylinder, sent it to a machine shop. Here's what my end dimensions ended up being, if you're curious, on an overbore. But it's got a new piston, another new Nomura. Yeah, I think that's how you say it. And I put a new timing chain in it because the other one had stretched almost a full link. So this has a brand new timing chain. How to do the timing chain: you need to take the rotor off and the one-way spread clutch right here, and you use this. This is what I highly recommend. I bought a couple different ones and they would not go over. You couldn't clear this, so when you had the deep half on the rotor, you couldn't get the puller in, so I had to find this deep one, and that's the brand of it. If it'll help you. I don't think it's got a part number. It's the thread size and pitch and everything. So the cam chain's there. I'm going to be putting the head on and set the cam timing, and hopefully this will help somebody who's got a question regarding the timing on this engine. I figured I'd better show this before I get ahead of myself, but you can set the timing on these without this cover being on over the rotor. Let's see this little arrow right here is where you line up your indicator mark on your rotor for top dead center. It's pretty close right there. So the piston's at TDC. There is no difference. The ignition doesn't care. Some people will say, is your ignition timing off? That's not the case with these. They have kind of what's called a wasted spark. So all you're worried about is getting this lined up here with that mark. If you had this cover on, you'll line up with that arrow in that hole, and you'll see that line with the T. This is a 91. I don't know if other years may have it, but you may have two lines here, one in front of it with an F. That's where the spark plug lights. It lights before you get to top dead center. The engine always rotates on these at the sprocket is going forward. The sprocket's on a counter shaft. The engine is turning forward. The main shaft here is spinning backwards. So it's spinning forward. You'll have the F with the line and then T with the line. If you see two lines without marks, F or T, it's always the second one. That's where your top dead center is. So I'm going to get the head on this and get the rest of it timed. So next step would be to pull the chain up, slide in the chain tensioner. You've got a special sleeve bolt. Goes all the way through the tensioner and into the head. Tighten that up finger tight for now. And the chain tensioner will go in, and this one works by this tensioning screw. So you push it all the way in, tighten that up, and place it in so. Okay, now we're ready to put the cam in. So important thing to do is to make sure that the crank rotates as you pull the chain, because it is possible, not necessarily in this model but in others, that the chain can jump on either side of the crank sprocket and it won't spin once you try starting the engine, and then bad things happen. So we lube up the cam journals, the cam bearings, or where they right, I guess. Not that on there yet. And you want the lobes facing down. And then we'll put the sprocket on. It's kind of tricky. Okay, so I'm not quite lined up. All right, that's lined up with the dowel pin on the cam. Maybe. No, I got it spun wrong. Okay, so I'm way off. The cam's in, but I'm way off on timing right now. So you see the marks right here. There's one there, and there's one there. Those need to be lined up with the head. So basically, I turn the sprocket within the chain. Check it again. We're getting closer. Bring the camera down right here and look. Almost there, maybe one, possibly two teeth off. Back the sprocket off again. So let's go one tooth. Oops, we're not lined up. Let's move down here. Let's get that line back up. And one more tooth. think I went too far. I went one too far. Okay, so we're lined up here and we're lined up here. I'm just gonna finger tight, put in the cam bolts finger tight for the moment. Have to spin it. That one doesn't want to go all the way in, but it should be good. So we'll double check it. Okay, the cam lobes should be up now, and they are. So we'll go around one more time. Lined up here, lined up there, and the cam lobes are down. So that's all you time the Suzuki 230. Don't release the tensioner until you have the rocker cover on. Put it on here. The rocker cover covers this and secures the cam into place. If you release the tension on that, it'll tension the chain and it'll pop the cam out of its home. So leave this loose until you got the rockers on, then you can loosen that, snug everything up, and you're ready to rip. Making progress. Top end's all put back together. I wanted to show you with the tensioner. If you recall, I pushed it all the way in and then set that, tighten that screw up to hold it in place. So now to set it, you hear it go into click into spot. Now just tighten this up. And then I don't have a 14 here, but you just tighten up this jam nut. After you've been riding it for a while, and you can hear a chain clatter. Just loosen this jam nut, back this out so that the spring pushes it in farther, and then tighten your set screw back down, and that's that. So I'm going to keep going and hopefully have it fired up here in the next day or so.